Alright, time to burn my eyes out because of the fact that the PC is definitely not going to get here anytime soon. From my knowledge, and we have to wait on shipping, which is probably going to take a long while. And then there's everything else that has to happen with it. So yeah, you're going to have to settle for phone variation, and on top of that, me going blind in the process. So please do forgive. Basically, allow me to make something very crystal clear here. The reason I have to do this is because the footage for the freaking session we had last Tuesday, unfortunately, my recording decided to get cut off by 50 freaking minutes. Totally gone. So what I'm going to have to do now is just kind of talk it out, and sadly I can't even use the original footage till later. So I'm going to try and give you a sped run version of what all happened last session. I do apologize for that. Turns out my entire operating system was corrupted. On top of the parts, honestly, that I needed to upgrade, those are going to take some time, and I have no clue how long they'll take. Just know that they were not pleasant. Dear Lord, not pleasant. Like, I feel like me and my wallet got violently fisted. But that's not because they were bad rates, it's just because it turns out PC parts are expensive. Whew. Or at least they're definitely expensive to a broke man. Thankfully, due to all the money that people raised, thankfully, those people did that, because honestly, if it wasn't for them, I wouldn't be able to do this for another minimum of 6 months, probably. No, really. Now, let's get into what happened last session. Last session, dear sweet Lucimon, I gotta remember to pronounce the I a little harder. Oh well. So Lucimon has kind of entered the fray. Some of you may know this, some of you may not, but basically the plan was to always get a second player. I can't remember if she was introduced in the last session or the session before suddenly, but due to this whole PC nonsense, I haven't been able to really do much of anything properly. I have to do it all by phone, which is not optimistic, or a good idea, or efficient, or effective, or good. But yeah. So ultimately, Lucimon has joined the crew. She is a ice-water dual-natured type Digimon. She is a rookie level. Despite Smab cracking jokes of that, looks more like a champ than a rookie, but oh well. We like to have fun with our looks when it comes down to it. Now, ultimately, her introduction was basically kind of similar to Smab's a little bit, waking up on a beach, staring out to a beautiful ocean. They got to know each other, things went well. They've learned a little bit, and I'm not going to lie, my players have made me so limitlessly proud because they got really excited and managed to deduce some things based off of some context clues. And I'm kind of excited about the implications. I did introduce some backstory for Lucimon relatively quickly, but I made sure to keep it small enough that there wasn't too much given away yet. I wouldn't be surprised if Smab has her own theories about Lucimon's backstory, but we'll see how it goes. So ultimately, I introduced some small little nuggets. I don't want to say exactly what they pertain to, other than that they cause Lucimon and Freya, by extension, to feel very violently angry and full of hate. For those of you who are curious, Lucimon is running a Digimetal setup, whereas Smab is running a Frontiers, basically Spirit Evolution styling, just for those who needed that recap and needed that knowledge as well. Ultimately, they decided to go traversing through this desert. They decided to take the left path. Basically, by taking the left path, they wound up basically getting themselves into a bit of a fight. I didn't think they triggered that. I'm actually kind of happy they did. But as a result to that triggering of that fight, they wound up fighting what was equivalency of a giant zombie Kunimon with legitimately a black spike driven through its skull, going all the way down, poking out of its neck. Now, here's the thing is, this thing is basically kind of like a zombie. Until you have destroyed the spike that's running through its head, it cannot die. At all. Glad they figured it out eventually. Especially since, just through Nat 1's Lucimon almost died day one. It was funny and kind of chaotic, and I'm not gonna lie, I didn't see that coming. Especially since she's not exactly a weak character. Uses a great sword, has a great amount of strength. She's rocking a ranger, if I remember correctly. I'm not 100% remembering, which worries me a little. It's either ranger or fighter, but I'm spacing the details. Ultimately, they go. Plasma manages to save Lucimon's derriere by using Plasmon's electrical whip to grab a hold of Lucimon and yank her away. And then move forwards to occupy attention, so that this way she wouldn't get hit any further. It worked. It saved her derriere. Now, from there, they made their way with the Kunimon and Dokunimon that they met to the city. Now, this city is oddly familiar to Plasmon, but is completely unknown to Lucimon and Freya. The reason why is because it is a run down, I wouldn't say much, but a lightly into the future version of Las Vegas in ruins. Because, Las Vegas, when you think about it, is really some wizard shit. People who don't get that reference, I'm sorry. I just subscribed to them and they made me laugh at that so much that I kind of felt like I needed, personally, to put Las Vegas here, and to not put Las Vegas in here would have felt oddly criminal. But doing so, they managed to get into an introduction with what they call the Don. In reality, the Don runs all of basically Digi Las Vegas, and just so happens to be a Shogun Gekomon. If you don't know what a Shogun Gekomon is, please look that up in your own time just for expediency's sake. And because I can't do any editing because I'm on my phone. So yeah. Ultimately, they meet Shogun Gekomon. And to put it mildly, Plasmon is not a fan of how Shogun Gekomon, on top of being quite genuinely more massive than pretty much any Shogun Gekomon has ever been, to the point of where he's kind of a bit of an irregularity. Blech. Ultimately, though, while Plasmon and Shogun Gekomon are kind of neutral, it's Freya and Shogun Gekomon that really vibed with each other very well. To the point of where Shogun Gekomon even allowed Freya to take a hit of his sincerely, immeasurably massive pipe. Like, it is unrealistically huge to her. To Shogun Gekomon, for those of you who do know smokes, it's basically the size of about half a cigarito. It is so small that it barely sticks out maybe even a couple of inches past his fingers on both sides. It is tiny to him, comically so. Disproportionately so. So much, this thing is so massive that not only does it take both Kunimon and Dokunimon trying to help her, but she also has to do some weird positioning with her arms and body in order to take a hit at all. And dear Lord, does she take a lot. She took a lot in, to the point of where the only complication for basically inhaling what was basically about 300 and some odd, I decided to roll a few D100s for this because I felt like this thing is so huge, so massively huge, that I had to do it in D100s. She basically managed to inhale, mind you, relatively well, a grand total of 314, I think it was, in my head, kilos of nothing but tobacco smoke from that pipe. Now, I probably should have made it so it was a little bit more severe or outright impossible to survive it, but I said, you know what, F that, that's no fun. Where's the fun in that? But she did have a mild complication of, she did have some pretty decent coughs for a couple moments. But dear Lord, did she champ it out so well that Shogun Gekomon actually kind of, like, in a sense, imprinted onto her. Like, she became his favorite. A lot. So much so that just because of how much of a trooper she was about it, he just said, you know what, F this, and went up and just slapped a button on the side of a pillar. Now, by the way, when he's sitting down, they have to be, like, at least 20 or even 30 feet back, just so they can crane their necks enough to see at least his chin. To actually see his whole mug, you have to go about a couple hundred feet back. You have to step on a few boxes, and then you crane your neck back and probably crack your back a little bit, going backwards. Doink. But basically, he decides to slap a button and kind of introduce them to his, in a sense, black market, his illegal kind of smuggling merchandise area. Now, here's the thing: is that this is something that Shogun Gekomon does not normally show anybody, much less travelers, new people. But between understanding what their role is to play, and also him knowing that ultimately Digimon put a lot of faith in one of them, and then this spunky little tiny Norse cat chick decides, I'm gonna take a hit of your pipe. Needless to say, he kind of likes the group. And they managed to get some cool stuff. Freya managed to find a gauntlet that basically boosted up her AC. And all at the same time, they managed to get a grand total of, I think I said 4 or 6, I can't remember which. I'm sure Smab will be kind enough to remind me in the comments if I said or not. But basically, if I didn't say anything, we're going to say 4 potions of healing. Or as we're going to call them, you guessed it, Digiroms. These Digiroms, when consumed, will heal the same way of a potion of healing. Now, the cool thing is that ultimately, things were going well at first, until everything went black, and then they found themselves standing on top of Shogun Gekomon. Freya having her iced sword clearly having gone ham on his skull, ripping, shredding, tearing, and splitting and maiming it to hell and back. Whereas with Smab, aka Plasmon, she has her quite literally metal fist jammed inside of Shogun Gekomon's chest, pumping out heat as she delves deeper into his chest, thus causing him death, especially when you top all that up. While he was still alive, he had things carved into his flesh, each one in their own respective languages. In Plasmon's case, the language that she saw was Japanese, and in case of Freya, she saw a language of Norse as well. It didn't get better from there. No. She also heard, in her head, a voice she hates and loathes taunting her and enjoying the taunt all the while. Also, along their way, they both saw signs as they were approaching this place. As they were approaching the city, they even saw a respective sign in the cases of Plasmon, where she noticed a name. The Asada Pharmaceuticals, which caused her to effing snap and basically shatter the thing like it's a freaking place in front of a bomb. Neither of them really 100% remarked on each other's little outburst, but it's clear that they have something in their past that they are struggling with, and they're becoming more and more aware that they'll have to eventually deal with it, even if they're not sure to what extent yet. But I will say I am very proud of one of my players for kind of picking up on a couple of hints. Now, granted, she still doesn't have the whole story yet. She has a good, a decent, chunk to the point where it's like, I want to reward this. Especially since she started pacing around her entire place, literally going nuts, theorizing about what's going down. So I just I love this. I want to reward this. I'm so happy. Yay. So I rewarded that and decided to spill a little bit beans. Not much. There's still tons of stuff that she hasn't figured out by any stretch. But ultimately, here's what they do have right now. They have inklings of how this might possibly have something related to a alternate timeline into the future. Which, I mean, interesting. That's not bad guess. It's not going to give her the whole answers, but continuing to think with that in mind, she will eventually get the answers. And that's the part that's so juicy. Now, here's the thing though. This is the fun part for me. This has ultimately been a lot of fun, but I have such really I know I already did a video talking a little bit about this, but I decided I'd announce another thing that's going to be happening as well at the same time. But unfortunately, that announcement has to wait until after Tuesday and after Thursday. I have to wait, and I don't do well with waiting at times. But what they do have is they have this. They have threats from the red-eyed monstrosity that's been bossing him around, and in case of Smab, has possessed her multiple times, forcing her to commit acts of insane, unhinged cruelty and absolute horrors. Whereas now, for Freya, this is her first time experiencing that. The feeling of being taken over and forced to commit an atrocity unlike anything. Now blood of innocence stains their hands, but they're reminded by a very certain individual. Ironically, those individuals are both Kunimon and Dokunimon, who saw the whole thing play out. Saw how Shogun Gekkomon had no hatred or malice or desire for revenge, just simply allowed it to happen for the sake of these two who he views to be potential salvation waiting in the wing when salvation's needed most. And as if none of that's quite enough, things are only going to get more interesting because now they have a hint of where their first destination should be. They have a hint, an inkling of where they need to be, desperately need to be. They need to find a giant seaweed and freaking tons of other oceanic stuff covered city with a giant, almost castle-esque spire that stretches up high, high up, encased and surrounded by nothing but ocean as far as the eye can see. But that's only where our story continues to go further. And I can't wait for Tuesday to the point where I've kind of been losing my shit. Like, I've been kind of losing it a little bit, okay? I need Tuesday to get here quicker. I know it's, by the time this video is up, it's going to be tomorrow, but that's not quick enough. Ultimately, I'm excited to see what comes. I can't wait to see the new thing get announced finally, especially since while we're not going to be recording it until after Thursday, we are going to be recording them from then on, or from after that point, I should say. Ultimately, I can't wait for that, and I also can't wait for our first after lore video. I really am very excited to see what comes next, and I especially can't wait, like I said, for Thursday, because it's going to be fun for me. Especially since, hopefully, if I've done this well, the incentive to do these things are going to be high, and the overall compellingness of them is only going to get better, especially as I go from stuff that's heavily backstory related to not as much backstory, kind of has some degree of relevancy in the world, and then blends into both. I can't wait to see what comes next. But for now, I do apologize for this recording error BS that happened, and I hope you all are excited or intrigued for what is to come. Thank you very much. See you. If I can find the button.